The Empire had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Its banners stretched across entire galaxies, and its fleets filled the void with the fire of conquest. Worlds bent their knees at the sight of golden warships, and no race dared to resist. The Empire believed itself eternal, unshakable, and beyond defeat. But even empires fall, and sometimes they fall from their own arrogance. Long before the Empire reached the Terran system, whispers filled the galaxy. There was a world that remained untouched, a place none dared claim. The Empire's scholars called it forbidden, cursed by ancient warnings older than recorded time. Yet those warnings only fed the pride of the rulers. If all other worlds had submitted, why should one small world be beyond their grasp? That world was Earth. At first, the Empire sent only scouts, expecting nothing but a simple conquest. The scouts vanished. Then they sent warships, powerful vessels armed with energy cannons capable of burning continents. None returned. Reports leaked from distant traders who had seen burning hulks drifting in Terran space. But the Empire dismissed these as lies, spread by frightened cowards. The High Council declared that no human race could stop them. The word Terran became a challenge, and pride demanded they answer. So the first invasion began. A fleet of 100 warships crossed the void, banners of the Empire blazing in defiance of the ancient warnings. Soldiers filled the holds, armored and armed, their voices rising in chants of conquest. They expected an easy victory, a quick strike to bring another world under control. But when they entered Terran space, something changed. The silence of the void was different here. The stars themselves seemed colder, sharper. Instruments failed without reason. Navigation twisted as if space bent against their maps. And then the humans appeared. They did not come with vast fleets or endless numbers. Only a handful of ships moved against the invaders, strange vessels built with brutal designs, more like weapons than ships. The Empire laughed at their crude appearance, certain victory was near. But when the battle began, laughter died. The Terran ships struck with speed and precision the Empire had never seen. They fought as if every move was planned, every shot already known. Empire cruisers exploded before they even locked targets. Entire squadrons vanished in moments. The humans moved like predators born from a harsher world than any the Empire had conquered. For every Terran ship destroyed, 10 Imperial ships burned. On the flagship, Commander Varen watched in disbelief as his fleet was torn apart. He shouted orders, demanded new formations, but nothing worked. It was as if the humans could read his thoughts before he gave the command. His soldiers cried out, not in courage but in fear, because for the first time in centuries, they faced an enemy they could not understand. Worse still, when the Terrans boarded Imperial vessels, the horror deepened. The humans were not tall or armored with alien strength. They looked fragile compared to the Empire's warriors. But their eyes burned with a fire that froze the hearts of even the most loyal soldiers. They fought without hesitation, without fear, striking with precision and fury that machines could not match. Imperial soldiers outnumbered them 10 to 1, yet the humans carved through them as if numbers meant nothing. By the end of the first battle, half the Imperial fleet was gone. Commander Varen ordered retreat, but even retreat was denied. Terran ships did not pursue with arrogance. They waited, watching, letting the survivors flee like broken animals. The message was clear. Terran space was forbidden, and those who entered would not leave unchanged. The Empire tried to hide its defeat. The High Council declared it only a minor setback. They claimed the commanders had been weak, the soldiers unworthy. Pride would not let them see the truth. Instead, they sent more fleets, greater and stronger, convinced that sheer numbers would crush human resistance. But among the surviving soldiers, whispers spread. They spoke of humans who fought like demons, who seemed to know the future of every battle. They told of a world that bent the very laws of space to protect itself. And most of all, They spoke of the eyes of the Terrans cold, fierce, and unyielding. Those who looked into them felt as if their own strength was stripped away, leaving nothing but fear. The humans had sent no diplomats, no messages, no demands. They only defended what was theirs. And that silence was more terrifying than any threat. Far from the battlefield, in the council chambers of the Empire, the rulers argued. Some said to leave Terran space untouched, that the old warnings had been true. Others said to strike harder, to bring the full might of the Empire against the humans. In the end, arrogance won. The Empire could not admit weakness, not to itself, not to the galaxy. And so the war began, not with a declaration, but with pride. The Terrans waited. The second fleet was unlike the first. Where Viren had led 100 ships, now 500 burned across the stars, each larger, heavier, armed with weapons capable of destroying moons. The Empire wanted to prove that numbers and power could still crush resistance. The Council told the galaxy that this time there would be no survivors on the human side, no chance for Terrans to resist. But when the massive fleet arrived near the borders of Terran space, the stars grew quiet again. The same cold silence that had haunted the first fleet settled upon them. Old veterans who had escaped the first disaster begged the new commanders to turn back. They spoke of the strange bending of space, the way machines failed, the eyes of the humans. The commanders laughed. They called the survivors cowards. And so the fleet advanced. The Terrans did not rush to meet them. Days passed as the fleet pressed deeper into forbidden space. The strange distortions grew stronger. Navigation faltered. Sensors failed. Entire ships drifted as if caught in invisible currents. Then, when confusion reached its peak, the humans struck. They came not with 500 ships, not even 100. Only a handful of Terran vessels moved in shadow, weaving between the Imperial giants. Their designs were brutal and dark, built more like beasts of prey than ships of war. The commanders mocked them, ordering their gunners to fire. But once again, their laughter died. Terran weapons tore through shields, as if they were nothing. Armor that had resisted suns cracked under their strikes. Human ships darted between the Empire's giants, shredding them from within. What terrified the Imperial crews most was not the destruction itself, but the precision. Every Terran strike found the weakest spot. Every maneuver anticipated Imperial reaction. It was as if the humans had fought this battle many times before. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship, Admiral Kareth roared in fury. He ordered every ship to target the Terrans, no matter the cost. Hundreds of cannons lit the void, but the humans were never where the fire landed. Whole barrages missed as if the Terrans danced through the future itself. Then came the boarding parties. Terran Marines stormed, Imperial vessels with terrifying efficiency. They did not wear heavy armor or carry weapons of impossible design. Their gear was simple, practical. But they moved with purpose, as if every corner of every ship was familiar ground. Imperial soldiers fought back with courage, yet courage was not enough. The humans cut through them like a blade through cloth. One soldier, a young Imperial named Dresha, watched in horror as a single human charged into a squad of 10. The Terran fought with brutal speed, every strike precise, every motion fatal. Dresha fired until her weapon overheated, but the human was already gone, moving like a shadow in flame. She survived only because the human looked at her once, eyes cold and unbroken, then turned away as if sparing her life on purpose. That gaze haunted her long after. By the battle's end, more than half the Imperial fleet was gone. The rest scattered, trying desperately to escape. Admiral Kareth refused to retreat, swearing his flagship would stand as proof of Imperial pride. He died when his ship split apart, burning silently in Terran space. When the survivors returned, the Empire was shaken. 2 fleets lost, thousands of soldiers dead, hundreds of ships destroyed, all against a handful of Terrans. Yet the High Council once again refused to admit weakness. They told the galaxy that the commanders had been incompetent, that the soldiers had been poorly trained. They claimed the Terrans were nothing more than lucky savages, but among the people of the Empire, fear began to spread. Merchants whispered of a world no power could claim. Scholars dug up old records of ancient warnings about the Terrans, stories of a species born on a death world where survival itself was war. Some said the humans were not just defending, they were teaching the galaxy a lesson. The lesson was simple. Terran space was forbidden, and yet pride would not allow the Empire to stop. The council gathered again, arguing loudly, their voices echoing through marble halls. Some demanded negotiation. Others demanded the extermination of humanity. In the end, arrogance ruled once more. They declared that if fleets could not win, then legions would. The Empire would send not ships alone, but armies, millions of soldiers, machines of war, weapons designed to crush civilizations in days. The orders went out. Across the stars, war machines stirred, factories thundered. Soldiers trained for a campaign that was promised to be the greatest conquest in history. The Empire had not yet understood the truth. It was not just ships or soldiers that made Terrans deadly. It was something deeper, something no weapon could break, and soon they would learn it the hard way. The Empire's third campaign was not a fleet, it was an armada. Thousands of ships gathered at the staging grounds, filled with soldiers, machines, and weapons the galaxy had never seen used all at once. Every world of the Empire sent its tribute. War titans that strode like mountains, siege cannons that could crack planets, and armored legions bred only for war. It was said that if this army failed, nothing else could save the Empire's pride. The High Council declared it the final crusade. From the great balconies of their golden halls, they shouted to the galaxy that Terran space would be conquered, and the humans would kneel. Millions of citizens cheered, though many whispered their doubts in secret. Already the losses of the first two fleets weighed heavily on them. When the Armada set out, its sheer size shook the void. Planets trembled as it passed. Stars reflected on the endless river of steel and fire. To many, it seemed impossible that such force could be defeated. Even those who feared the Terrans wondered how a single world could resist. The first weeks passed quietly. The Armada entered Terran space with care, machines scanning every corner of the void. Yet the strange bending of space began again. Instruments faltered. Coordinates twisted. Some ships vanished without a fight, swallowed by shadows with no trace. The commanders grew restless, for the enemy remained unseen. Then, finally, the Terrans appeared. They did not come with fleets to match the Armada. Instead, they struck like ghosts. A dozen ships here, a squadron there, striking and vanishing before the Empire could respond. But every strike cost the Empire dearly. Entire cruisers vanished in sudden fire. Legions prepared for landing never touched the ground, their carriers torn apart before descent. The Terrans fought not with numbers, but with knowledge. They knew every weakness, every blind spot, as if the Empire had revealed all its secrets to them long before. General Raylan, commander of the ground forces, finally landed on a Terran moon. His army stretched for miles, machines marching like iron rivers, banners flying high. He believed victory was near. Yet the Terrans did not meet him in open battle. They struck from shadows, from tunnels, from mountains. One squad of humans could hold against 100 Imperial soldiers. Their traps destroyed entire columns. Their snipers ended commanders before orders were spoken. The ground itself seemed to fight for them. Mines, collapsing caverns, poisoned fields, every step forward bled the Empire dry. Soldiers began to whisper that the humans were everywhere, that they watched from the shadows, striking only when fear was deepest. General Raylan ordered a purge. Villages burned, forests turned to ash, prisoners executed. He believed terror would break the humans. Instead, it only hardened them. The more the Empire destroyed, the more fierce the resistance became. Every soldier killed gave rise to 10 more Terrans willing to fight. One night, Raylan's command camp was breached. A small band of humans slipped through every guard, every machine, as if the defenses were meaningless. They struck swiftly, leaving dozens of officers dead. Raylan himself survived only because he fled into the dark, abandoning his men. For the first time in his life, he felt hunted. Across the Armada, similar stories spread. Admirals spoke of Terran ships appearing inside formations that should have been impenetrable. Soldiers spoke of humans who fought even when wounded, who dragged enemies into death with their last breath. Machines designed to crush cities fell silent, sabotaged before they could fire. The Empire had brought overwhelming force, yet it was bleeding faster than ever. The worst blow came when the Terrans finally revealed their strategy. They had not been fighting to win battles, they had been guiding the Armada, slowly, deeper into Terran space, further from supply lines, further from escape. When the trap closed, it was too late. The Armada was surrounded. Not by thousands of human ships, only by a few hundred. But those ships struck from every direction at once, guided by knowledge of space itself. Imperial ships collided, fired upon one another in confusion, or were torn apart by precise Terran attacks. In 3 days, the greatest armada in Imperial history was gone. Out of thousands of ships, only a handful escaped. Out of millions of soldiers, only fragments survived. The Empire had not just lost a battle, it had lost its future. The High Council silenced the truth, but whispers spread faster than light. Entire worlds began to question their rulers. If humans could resist the full might of the Empire, then perhaps the Empire was not eternal after all. And in Terran space, the humans remained silent. They sent no envoys, made no demands. They only watched. Their silence was worse than war, for it meant they had not yet shown their full strength. The Empire had struck 3 times, and 3 times it had bled. Pride still ruled its leaders, but doubt had begun to poison their people. The fall of an empire rarely begins with enemies. It begins with cracks inside its own walls, and now, those cracks were spreading. The defeat of the Armada sent shockwaves through the galaxy. News could not be silenced, no matter how hard the High Council tried. Traitors whispered of burning fleets. Soldiers returned broken, carrying stories of humans who fought like demons, of ships that moved through space as if the stars themselves obeyed them. The Empire's citizens began to doubt. Fear grew in markets, in temples, even in the homes of nobles. Inside the golden halls of the High Council, voices rose in anger. Some demanded the extermination of humanity, no matter the cost. Others, shaken by the scale of loss, argued for caution. Old records of forbiddance warnings were brought forward again. Dusty scrolls describing Terrans as a people born of endless struggle, forged by a world that tested them every day. To some, these records sounded like myths. To others, they sounded like prophecy. The Council chose arrogance once more. They declared the defeats a matter of poor leadership, not human strength. New commanders were appointed, each one more ruthless than the last. But beneath the surface, fear was spreading among the very people sworn to obey. Governors on distant worlds began to hesitate when orders came. Admirals delayed their fleets, pretending their ships needed repairs. The cracks of rebellion began to form. On one border world, an Imperial garrison faced a small band of Terran raiders. Instead of standing and fighting, the soldiers surrendered, begging the humans for mercy. They were not killed. The humans disarmed them, destroyed their weapons, and left them alive. This act shocked the galaxy more than slaughter would have. The Empire thrived on fear, but the humans showed no interest in ruling or enslaving. They only defended what was theirs. To many in the Empire, that was more terrifying than conquest. Admiral Dresha, the young soldier who had once looked into a human's eyes and lived, now commanded a fleet of her own. But unlike the others, she did not hunger for revenge. She had seen what humans were capable of. She knew they fought not for glory, not for pride, but for survival. In the secret halls of her command ship, she whispered doubts to her closest officers. "We are not fighting beasts," she told them. "We are fighting the truth. And the truth is that our empire has become blind." But voices like hers were drowned in the roar of pride. The High Council announced a new plan. If fleets and armies could not crush the Terrans, then the Empire would break them from within. Spies were sent, infiltrators trained to slip past defenses and learn the secrets of Earth itself. The Council believed that if they could understand what made the humans so dangerous, they could finally destroy them. The infiltrators never returned. Weeks later, strange messages appeared in Imperial networks. Images of human cities, shining with lights beneath skies filled with stars. Children playing, soldiers training, engineers building machines from nothing. The messages carried no threats, no demands. Only a single line repeated in every tongue of the Empire. "We are not conquerors. But we are not prey." This silent defiance enraged the rulers. Yet among the people, it spread like fire. For the first time, many in the Empire wondered if humanity was not an enemy, but a mirror, showing them how far they had fallen. As the Council plotted its next move, the unrest deepened. Riots broke out on border worlds. Soldiers refused orders. Some governors whispered of siding with the Terrans, believing humans would bring freedom where the Empire brought only chains. The High Council responded with fear. Whole cities were purged, rebels executed, whispers silenced with blood. But fear could not hide the truth. The Empire had lost 3 great wars against a single world. And worse, it was losing itself. In hidden chambers, some counselors finally admitted what they dared not say aloud. The fall of the Empire had already begun. Not by the humans' hands, but by their own arrogance. The humans had only shown them the edge of the cliff they were already standing on, and as the cracks spread deeper, the Terrans remained silent. They had no need to boast, no need to conquer. Their silence was the loudest weapon of all. The cracks inside the Empire widened until they could no longer be hidden. Whole sectors refused to send tribute. Fleets ignored orders. Governors began declaring independence, some quietly swearing they would never again bleed for arrogant rulers who could not even defeat a single world. The great golden halls of the High Council echoed not with pride, but with fear. Still, the rulers tried to keep control through violence. They sent execution fleets to rebellious systems, burning cities and leaving worlds in ruins. But every act of cruelty only pushed more systems away. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's subjects realized the truth. They did not need the Empire to survive. And all the while, the Terrans did nothing. They did not send armies to take advantage. They did not send fleets to conquer broken worlds. They simply waited, silent and watchful, as if they knew the Empire would destroy itself faster than any human bullet could. This silence drove the High Council mad. They had built their rule on the idea that fear controlled everything. But how could they control an enemy that did not want their throne, their riches, or their people? Among the soldiers, loyalty began to crack. Whispers spread of humans sparing prisoners, of villages left untouched even after battles. Soldiers asked themselves why they should die for rulers who wasted lives for pride, when even the enemy showed more honor. Admiral Dresha, once a loyal commander, now faced a choice. Her fleet stood at the edge of Terran space, ordered to invade once more. But her heart told her the truth: the Empire could not win. She called her officers together. In a dim-lit chamber, she spoke softly but firmly. "We are told the humans are beasts. But I have seen their eyes. They fight because they must, not because they hunger for power. We fight because our rulers cannot admit their mistakes. Ask yourselves, which of us is truly savage?" The room was silent. Then one by one, her officers lowered their heads. That night, Admiral Dresha made her choice. Instead of leading her fleet into Terran space, she turned it away. The message she sent to the High Council was simple: "We will not be your sacrifice." Her act of defiance spread like wildfire. Other admirals began refusing orders. Some joined her, creating a coalition of fleets no longer loyal to the Council. They called themselves the Free Stars, and their first declaration was that no ship under their banner would enter Terran space again. The Council responded with rage. They sent assassins after Dresha, but they failed. They branded the Free Stars as traitors, but their words carried little weight. Across the Empire, rebellion burned brighter than ever. Meanwhile, in the shadows of Terran space, the humans finally moved. Not in conquest, but in warning. They sent a single ship into neutral space, where both Imperial and Rebel fleets could see. The ship carried no weapons raised, only a message broadcast into every language: "Your empire is falling." We did not break it. You did. The message shook the galaxy. Even those who still served the Empire could not deny its truth. The arrogance of the High Council had brought ruin upon itself. The humans had only defended what was theirs. On one Imperial world, riots turned into open war. Citizens rose against their governors, chanting not for the humans, but for freedom. Soldiers abandoned their posts, joining the people instead of killing them. The fire spread to another world, and then another. Soon, rebellion was no longer scattered, it was a storm. The High Council sat in their golden chambers, terrified. They had once commanded the galaxy, but now they could not even command their own fleets. Some whispered of negotiating with the Terrans, but it was too late. The humans had no interest in ruling the Empire. They did not need to. The Empire was crumbling on its own, and still, Terran space remained untouched. But deep in the shadows, among the humans, a decision was being made. For though they had not sought war, they knew one truth. If the Empire fell into chaos, its dying thrash could still destroy countless worlds. Humanity would need to choose: remain silent and risk the galaxy burning, or step forward and reveal their strength once and for all. The Empire was dying. But like any dying beast, it struck wildly in its last moments. The High Council, desperate to prove they still held power, unleashed weapons forbidden even by their own laws. Planets were burned to ash. Cities that had whispered of rebellion were drowned in fire. Millions died not because of the humans, but because of rulers too proud to admit defeat. From across the galaxy, the cry rose louder: enough! The Free Stars gathered strength. Fleets that once bore the Empire's banners now flew new colors. Worlds long enslaved declared their freedom. And in the middle of it all, Terran space remained untouched, silent as always. Many had begun to believe the humans would never step beyond their borders, that they were content only to defend their own skies. But then, the humans moved. It was not a fleet of conquest that emerged. It was a single ship, black and scarred from countless battles, carrying no flag but its own. It entered a neutral star system where Imperial loyalists and Free Star rebels were locked in a desperate fight. Both sides paused as the Terran ship drifted between them. Its presence was like a shadow across the stars. The message it carried was simple: the war is not with us. But if you bring your fire to Terran space again, you will never return. The words were not shouted with arrogance. They were spoken with calm certainty, like truth carved into stone. Both sides listened, for even the rebels, who hated the Empire, feared angering the humans. Then something unexpected happened. Admiral Dresha, leader of the Free Stars, transmitted her reply not to the humans, but to the entire galaxy. We have shed blood for rulers too blind to see the truth. The humans never sought to rule us. They only showed us what pride has cost. If the galaxy must have a new beginning, let it begin here, without chains, without arrogance, without empire. Her words spread faster than any fleet. Worlds already close to rebellion rose up completely. Soldiers who still wore imperial colors threw down their weapons. Even among the Council's guard, loyalty collapsed. The golden capital of the empire fell within a month, not to human armies, but to its own people. Statues of rulers were torn down. Thrones were abandoned. The council fled, hiding in shadows where their voices could no longer reach. And still, the Terrans did not conquer. They did not march across the stars, demanding surrender. They remained in their own space, silent, watching, letting the galaxy decide its fate. This silence became legend. For the first time in history, the galaxy saw an empire fall without another rising in its place. The humans had shown a strength far beyond fleets or weapons. They had shown restraint. They had shown that power was not in ruling others, but in standing unbroken when the storm came. On Earth, in the quiet fields and cities where the Terrans lived, life continued as it always had. Farmers worked their soil, engineers built their machines, children laughed under the same stars where fleets had burned. To them, survival was nothing new. It was simply who they were, but across the galaxy, the story spread. Traders spoke of humans whose eyes saw deeper than war. Refugees told of soldiers who fought without cruelty. Rebels whispered of a single world that had faced the greatest empire and never bowed. The empire's arrogance had destroyed itself. Humanity had only reminded the galaxy of a truth too long forgotten. Strength is not measured by how many worlds you can rule. It is measured by how fiercely you protect your own. And so the humans returned to their silence. While the galaxy changed forever, the Terran space remained forbidden. Not by chains, not by laws, but by respect. Because now every star knew there were some worlds you did not claim.